The following Degrassi video contains discussions about suicide, gun violence, molestation, mutilation, cutting cultural differences, and many other topics that are not to be taken humorously. These are serious topics, and this is a serious video about Degrassi diving into many different subjects. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Hey there, Heather. Ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Degrassi video that I have just produced. And this is called The 12 Most Poignant Scenes You Just Can't Unsee. Now, about a month ago, June 8th to be exact, on the Facebook Degrassi group, not that I am Degrassi fanatics, this guy named Mike Nelson posted many screen grabs of famous scenes involving characters and all that. And what I did is I shuffled through them and I took pictures of the ones that I thought were basically poignant scenes and all that. Now, of course, there are some scenes that, like the pictures he put up, that I didn't agree with. I didn't think they were poignant enough, but the fact of the matter is, just my opinion and all that. I know I could easily have just asked the Degrassi Reddit community to rank them from 1 to 12 and all that. But I decided to do it on my own terms and all that and give you my ranking of the 12 most poignant scenes from 12 to 1 with the picture and, of course, the voiceover. Because seeing is believing, and I want to let you see the physical evidence. So I'm just doing a voiceover. Of course, my rankings are going to be different than everyone else's. That's fine by me, but I just wanted you to know. So here we go. All right, so first off at number 12 is Drew's crying face. As you can see, Drew is like looking at people staring and saying, I just can't believe it, and then drops a card and then starts crying. And that's a crying meme, if you will, the Degrassi version of a crying meme. However, it's just as much because the background is that when Adam decides to text and drive in the episode Honey, he tries to get to Becky, but unfortunately he loses his focus and crashes his truck into a pole. He survives at first and he goes through surgery and all that. And of course, Audra has to tell the doctor about, Adam's transition from female to male. And then at a summer camp, which Adam was supposed to help with, that Drew was at, Drew gets the news from his parents that Adam had died from his injuries. And then he had a card that a camper made for him, and he dropped it and then did the crying meme. It was just sad. It was terrible how they killed off Adam this way. They could have easily had Adam go to another school or pursue something else, but no, they just killed Adam. And basically, Degrassi got a lot of crap for burying their gays, as they say, the bury your gays trope. But the actress didn't want to come back to Degrassi. She wanted to do other things. So they just basically off-killed Adam. And it had a profound effect on a lot of people, especially Becky, who actually was close to being with Adam, despite the fact that Becky's family is that Christian goody-goody ones who, yes, the same family who basically wanted Becky to lie and protect Luke after he raped Zoe. Yes, those assholes. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. But nevertheless, it was huge. Imogen nearly told Becky about the fact that she had feelings for Adam, but didn't. She didn't want Becky to be hurt. It would have been a poignant scene to see the two of them together, but it didn't happen. Anyhow, so number 11 is the poignant scene in season 3 when Ellie starts to cut herself with a protractor. I know you, or is it a compass? I always get the two mixed up, but yeah, she decides to put stuff, well, with a compass. I'm not going to basically show it in detail because I don't think that's a good idea. Nevertheless, so Ellie's having problems in her home life. She's got a co-op she has to prepare for. Her dad is a colonel that heads to Afghanistan because, at the time, Canada was helping the U.S. with the thing in Afghanistan. And her mother just took herself as a drunk and all that. Ellie was trying to handle everything, and then she starts to cut herself, and then Paige spots Ellie with blood and all that, and basically asks Ellie to show her arm. Of course, Paige was kind of going for the same co-op as Ellie, but Paige says the job doesn't matter to me. Your your mental health is important to me. So basically, Paige sees the arm, and a kind of unqueen bee move. She feels sympathy for Ellie and all that. She tells Sove about it. Ellie goes to um, therapy with Sove, but just doesn't talk about it. And then Sove says, "You'll talk when the time is right." And Ellie gets better and all that. She goes through therapy and all that. Her dad comes back, but he has PTSD and all that. Her mom kind of gets better in a sense after Ellie moves out of the place to live with Sean because Ellie's mom kind of burns her house in a bit. But yeah, it shows that Paige does have recurring moments. Of course, this does come with controversy, not just because of the whole way that Ellie was cutting herself. A couple of Montreal area high school girls thought it was a good idea to do the same thing. So basically, they did, and CTV had to apologize for the imagery and all that. So anyway, that's how that goes. Next at number 10 is the scene in which Joseph, aka Manny's dad, basically calls Manny a slut and all that. And as you see in the top panel, he talks about how he's worked his butt off and he doesn't want his girl to be called a slut. I mean, the only thing I agree with Joseph is the fact that, yeah, he's got a point. Like, immigrant families work hard, like the fathers especially work hard to provide for their kids when they come over to a new country. And that's true with like Manny, because Manny and her family came over from the Philippines to Canada, and Joseph put his butt on the line to make sure that his daughter would have a clear cut opportunities for life in Canada to fit in Canada. But he just doesn't want Manny to fall behind and be perceived as a slut. And Manny kind of, unfortunately though, she wanted to get breast implants because she thought that she could get better roles and all that instead of letting her natural beauty flow. And unfortunately, because it was on her father's credit card, he definitely found out about it. Thankfully, they got the money back because Manny canceled the procedure. But the fact that he calls his daughter a slut is just inexcusable. What's even more inexcusable in my mind is the fact that Manny's mom basically doesn't stand up for Manny. She just basically is submissive and all that. I know some people have said that that's the thing with foreign parents and all that, that sometimes the mothers are submissive and all that because they don't want the wrath of their husbands. And basically, it's a cultural thing. It shouldn't be a cultural thing. It shouldn't. But the fact of the matter was that, Joseph was looking out for Manny and all that, but it was just taken incorrectly. He put it incorrectly. It's his fault. Manny then moves in with Emma after Emma finally realizes how much trouble Manny is in and decides to do the right thing by letting Manny live with her for a year and a bit until JT dies, and then Manny moves back in, and Emma, of course, goes off the rails, thinking she's going to lose Manny as an ally. Okay, next at number 9 is when Joey finds out that Craig's dad beats up on Craig. Now, and Angie pipes in and all that. Well, Sean tells Joey, and then Angie pipes in. That's what you see in the panels. The fact of the matter was that Craig was introduced as this character in season 2 who likes photography. I can almost never say that right. But the fact of the matter is that, his dad was controlling. He would be set off on the smallest thing and beat up Craig and all that. Craig tries to take it with good humor and all that, but doesn't. He gets beaten up a lot. Craig is so disturbed that he plays chicken with a train, and Sean thankfully pulls Craig off the tracks. Joey, of course, doesn't understand the whole situation with Craig and all that, but Emma and Sean poignantly told him that, and that's when Sean told him that Craig's dad beats up on Craig, and Joey says, "How do you know about this? This is a serious accusation." And Angie actually pipes up saying that he's purple and bruised like a dinosaur. And so Joey takes Angie at her word, and then they try to find Craig because Craig has disappeared. And Emma looks at old family photos and finds out that Craig could be at the grave of his mother, which surprisingly was Julia Manning. Julia, the woman that Joey was with and lost her when he talked about her in the inaugural episode of Next Gen. So the pieces fell through. Julia left Craig and Albert for Joey, and it's possible that Albert uses Craig as a punching bag for his emotions and all that, as a whipping boy, if you will. Fortunately, though, Craig goes in to move in with Joey. Craig's dad finally pops back in the picture to get Craig, gets mad at Craig for an oversight, and basically crashes his car, probably out of anger. Who knows what could have happened? And Craig tries to process his feelings about losing his dad and all that. He should be happy that his tormentor is dead, but he still has feelings for him. Terry points that out at the luau dance. And number 8 is Esme when she blows up in the finale of Degrassi as we know it, because there's not been a Degrassi series after Next Class. Esme was introduced in Next Class as this manipulative sociopath. Well, some people call her sociopath. This girl who had dealt with her mother killing herself, allegedly in front of a 10-year-old Esme, and Esme has some emotional trauma and all that. She is manipulative AF, especially around Miles and a few other people, especially the final season. When she tries to gravitate towards Sig, her and Sig were there. Maya tries to off herself at the end of season 3 of Next Class, and they both find her on the roof, and Esme's advice saves Maya. Unfortunately, Esme is upset when it appears that Sig is gravitating towards Maya and tries to do everything in her power to basically make Maya look like a bad guy for trying to kill herself. And also the fact that, she puts Sig and Frankie in a polyamorous relationship so she can keep Sig and prevent him from moving on to Maya. Unfortunately, a series of unfortunate events have Sig and Maya going to prom, even though that Maya was unsure about it, saying you should be with Esme. Esme finds Sig and beats him up at the prom and all that. Maya decides not to go to graduation, saying that she was the cause of this. But Grace, to her credit, decides to help Maya with her problems. And then Esme buys a motorcycle to keep Sig. Sig says, you need help and all that. And Esme says, we need to be together. I called in a bomb threat, for God's sake. And we find out that, the bomb threat that ruined the prom, that was Esme. It wasn't Syed. They falsely accused Syed because, he's Muslim and all that. And he wants to move to Montreal to get away from the Islamophobia. But Lola convinces him to stay. So the fact of the matter is that Esme starts being up sick with a motorbike helmet, and Miss Growl, the counselor, tells her it's not too late to admit you need help. And Esme collapses into her arms, and we wish we see if Esme got the help she needed. And number 7 is when Manny tells Emma about her decision to abort her child, and Emma blows steam at Manny, saying that, adoption's a good agency. You can't kill this kid. And Manny says that, I'm 14. I can't take on this responsibility. And Emma thinks that Manny can do anything if she puts her mind to it. Of course, the whole Manny, Craig, Ashley love triangle, very big and all that. And Manny ends up being impregnated by Craig. So Manny doesn't know what to do with the child and all that. She can't tell her parents she's pregnant and all that. Ashley spills Manny's secret out to the world. Ashley had a right to. She was trying to hurt Craig, not Manny. So, anyway. Ashley did all that. But anyway, Craig really wants this kid. Manny isn't so sure about the kid and all that and realizes she can't do it. She tries to babysit Emma's baby brother Jack, but fails miserably and says that she can't do it. So she talks to her mom, and her mom agrees to take her to the clinic. Of course, she tells Emma, and Emma blows up, saying that, think about the baby's rights and all that. Of course, Emma was nearly aborted herself, and she thinks it's upon herself to deal with abortion and all that. She says that Manny can get through it. I mean, Emma knows her mom went through it and came out okay. Of course, she decides to tell Craig everything, and Craig blows up saying that you can't do that. Now, Craig has a point, but he doesn't say it. He doesn't tip his hand to the fact that, Craig's family's broken. His parents are both dead. Joey, he doesn't treat well, to be honest with you. And, you know, all that. But Emma steps in and basically says that Craig has all the points, but it's Manny's body and her choice. And Emma points out that if she wasn't my best friend, I'd be furious. Which made me think, wait a minute, didn't Emma and Manny end their friendship because of some problems with a ravine, with a rave? But allegedly they came back together. But anyway, Emma says that, it's Manny's body and her choice, and I have to live through it. And part of me thinks, well, did Emma decide that by herself? I think that Emma probably was talked to by Spike. Spike knew and talked to Emma saying, you have to be a good friend. And Emma basically did all that. I can't blame Emma for getting mad at Manny and all that. It is a hot button topic. All right, and number 6 is when Sean tells his parents about what happened to Rick and all that. And Sean's parents comfort him. So, anyway, Rick comes back to Degrassi when he should not have been. Raj should have done his damn job and prevent Rick from coming back thinking that there'd be retribution and all that. But he said his hands were tied. He could have at least tried better. The fact of the matter is that Rick was a ticking time bomb. Spinner, Jay, and Alex were going to make his life a living hell, especially after Rick retaliated with spray paint and all that. They do the paint and feathers to humiliate Rick. Emma tries to help Rick out with that issue, but Emma gets kissed at and basically says, I pity you, get a clue. He gets his dad's gun, which is stupid. Why was it easily accessible? And then wants to go after Paige, but then learns that Paige thinks everything was childish and doesn't show the gun and basically decides not to shoot Paige or let the gun be visible. He gets tricked by Spinner and Jay to shoot Jimmy, and then he conveniently finds Emma, Sean, and Toby and wants to destroy Emma for pinning him. Anyway, Sean tries to calmly talk to Rick, but Rick's too far gone, and they wrestle for the gun. The gunshot goes off. Sean's okay. He has a bandage on his arm. But then they find out that Rick had died in the scuffle, and Sean's a hero and all that. Relishes the hero spot, was not happy when Sove and Simpson wanted him to talk about his problems. And also his parents said something on the news, and basically he blows off, goes to Wasaga, almost dies through a jet ski thing, and then realizes that his trauma is real and tells him that, Rick was going to kill my friend and I needed to do something, and I accidentally killed him. And he feels guilty and then stays in Wasaga Beach to deal with his PTSD. Methinks that Sean also was worried that the cops were going to go after him. But after all, I mean, Sean would have never been able to go to Wasaga Beach on that Monday. He would have been forced to stay in Toronto State within his own home while he was being investigated. The cops think he's a hero. And besides, Rick was the bad guy the whole time. So, like, Sean's a hero and all of that. He came back in season 6, basically fawned over Emma and then left her for the army. Just like that. At number 5 is when Zoe's mom actually disowns her. Zoe's dad takes a box of stuff for Zoe for her college life and with her birth certificate and everything, and she's upset saying that she doesn't want me anymore. It's a contentious issue because of the fact that not Emma, sorry, what am I thinking? That, Zoe was an actress and all that. She was getting roles. She got kicked off a famous um, show because of her drug problems. She got clean and all that, and then she ended up doxing Maya over Miles, and then she gets raped by Neil and Luke and doesn't know what to do. Becky stands up for Zoe and tells everyone that Luke was a terrible person and all that, and basically gets herself ostracized. But her parents couldn't kick her out because then she would talk more. So anyway, um, Zoe then, after the Degrassi nudes thing, conveniently decides to come out as being lesbian, which is like out of freaking nowhere. She thinks Grace would be a perfect partner, but Grace is hetero. And so what ends up happening is that Zoe, lives a gay life. And unfortunately, though, homophobic producers don't want her on TV or movies. And Zoe's mom, who was kind of living through Zoe's life as an actress, was upset and basically kicked Zoe out and decided to marry what we call a sugar daddy because she could have also got a job herself, but she couldn't support herself through a job. So she married an older man with money and all that. Zoe is upset. Her mom did say she wanted to go to graduation to support Zoe, but did not. And basically, Zoe's heartbroken and all that. But then Zoe realizes that she doesn't need her mom. She's got her friends as family, and there's no need to have her in her life. Of course, as I said on the Facebook thing, there were two things you can worry about. Number one was the whole religious thing because, Catholics are not completely good with homosexuals. And it's not like completely true. Like, it's not 100% hate. It's gone down to maybe 60-50. But regardless of that, the religious thing. But more than likely, as I said, that Zoe's mom was living vicariously through Zoe. And because Zoe was not getting roles and all that, Zoe's mom would have to get a job. And she didn't want to. So she disowned her. At number 4 on the list is Jane confronting her dad. In Jane Says, a poignant two-parter in season 8, the chef comes back from sensitivity training. A lot of the Degrassi people don't want him there, but he says he has to basically get better and all that, and arranges an alumni football game against the current Degrassi squad. And then Jane finds out that her dad is going back in their lives and all that. Lucas is happy that his dad's back in his life, but Lucas is kind of a deadbeat dad, if you will. Doesn't really care much for Izzy as it seems, and basically passes her off to Jane's mom and all to their mom or Mia's mom. But anyway, as it turns out, that Jane hates her dad for some reasons, but then realizes it through flashbacks and all that Jane's dad had his own way with Jane and basically would dress her, undress her, and you get the picture. The fact of the matter was that Jane realized that she was being sexually accosted by her dad. All that. The fact of the matter is that she realizes this and confronts him about it and tells Lucas about everything. Lucas doesn't at first believe Jane. I think, in a sense, thinking that Jane was making it up. But then Jane got him to see a connection, and then he realizes it. And when their dad gets close to Izzy, he realizes the cycle of abuse might happen again. So he cuts the dad out of his life, saying, "We don't need you anymore." Jane tells her mom about everything, and Lucas opens up and says, "I should have been there for you." However, Jane gives him a pass because A, they were kids and all that, and B, that Lucas at least is atoning for his mistakes. So basically, they go through family therapy to work together. And worst of all, after this episode, poof, Lucas is gone. And Jane doesn't even mention him. I really think we all, Degrassi fans, need to know if Lucas got the redemption arc or he's working towards redemption. But no, everything was just up in the air. As I said, I wanted Lucas's redemption arc. I want to know about Lucas. did he fix the problems with Mia and Izzy? Maybe, maybe not. After all, Mia does take Izzy to her to Paris. So that's probably a clue. But still, all that. And, this is really sad and all that. But I don't think it's the saddest. At number 3 is Maya blowing up about the Cam situation and giving her speech and all that. So the context is that Maya fell in love with Cam in season 12, and then Sig, for some dumb reason, has feelings for Maya, even though that he's supposed to be with Tori. But anyway, it was a messy love triangle between Maya, Sig, and Cam. Cam was this hotshot, can't miss hockey prospect who goes to Degrassi and all that. People assume that Degrassi has an ice hockey team. It is actually not true. The Ice Hounds are this minor team and all that. In Canada, I know there's a US system too, but in Canada, there's a system that with what they call major junior players, players from the age of 16 to 19 play on these junior teams and try to get scouts from the NHL and other leagues too to try to recruit and all that. You want to be in the NHL because that's the big boy leagues in North America and all that. So he was a prospect that many NHL teams like the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Vancouver Canucks, well, of course, I'm Canadian, what do you expect? Um, did and all that. So he didn't like hockey because of all the pressures around him and all that. And prospects do get overwhelmed because they're supposed to be the hotshot stuff like Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid. So anyway, he tries to get out of playing hockey because he's miserable. And after all, he's 10 hours away from home. He comes from Kapuskasing in northern Ontario, and his parents aren't there for him. Maya feels bad for him. Sig thinks that Cam is going after Maya and gets Cam wound up and basically tries to ruin Cam and Maya. And then Sig tells Cam the final blow: stay out of Maya's life forever. Cam then offs himself in the J.T. York Memorial Garden. We don't know how and all that. A lot of people say he hung himself. My theory, and this is mine alone, basically said that he probably drank chemicals from the garden center. Chemicals are there. Well, that could be true. Also, he could have also drank the chemicals and under the influence of the chemicals, slashed himself or hung himself. Because as somebody who works in a garden center at work for the past 3 years, I know about toxicity and all that. So the fact of the matter is that, Cam dies and all that. Maya refuses to shed a tear, saying that he was selfish for killing himself. And that's understandable. I understand. Maya looks at it saying that, you could have got the help. I could have helped him. That was her first reaction. And everyone was upset about Maya's reaction. Maya then becomes more promiscuous with Harry and all that. Katie and her mom call her out on it, and she basically blasts them, saying that you can't get over Cam. Why not? He broke up with me by killing himself, and I'll never be happy again. Jeez, Maya, are you setting yourself up for failure? But the fact is that, he left without saying goodbye. And I get it with Maya. She's upset that Cam left her high and dry. But the fact of the matter is that just when you think Maya was over Cam, season 14, she basically has visions of Cam while she's trying to get with Miles and then thinks that Miles is going to do the same thing as Cam did. And of course, she's wrong, but the signs were there. And then, of course, next class, after that bus crash, it all came back to her. So brutal. At number 2 for poignant scenes is the scene from the end of season 7 of Next Gen, in which the graduating class puts a graduation cap on JT's memorial at the JT Memorial Garden and turn the tassel and all that. So, of course, you can take the scene a lot. So, anyway, JT was kind of the class clown of comic relief and all that. He had his adult moments too, especially in season 5, trying to help Liberty out with her pregnancy and all that, and trying to be a good dad, unlike his dad who ran out on him and his mom. So he gets a job as a pharmaceutical assistant. Jay comes up conveniently and tells him that, do OxyContin, sell that, and you'll be golden. So he kind of does that. Liberty finds that out and tells him to get out of the drug trade. JT tries, but the drug dealer refuses to help him. And then when JT realizes his life is turning pale around him, Jay gives his response as only Jay would. Bummer times, but at least there's a party. JT decides to end his life by taking drugs, but ends up, going to the hospital thanks to Jay. Liberty gives up the baby and breaks up with JT, saying that JT just can't be the perfect dad and all that. And of course, Liberty says that we both made mistakes. Yeah, Liberty was not helpful with the whole thing. All Liberty did was try to hide her pregnancy, and that could have been dangerous for the fetus. Nevertheless, she gives birth, she gives it up for adoption, and then the family moves to Seattle. Liberty's upset over it, but her parents basically say that she's assigned to it. Liberty has signs of postpartum, but her parents just don't want to hear about it. JT tries to prove to Liberty that he's a good dad and gets together with Mia and her daughter Izzy, and Liberty was jealous. Unfortunately, though, JT decides to go after Liberty, realizing that being with Mia might have been a mistake. And I think he realized that if he went back to Liberty, then the Degrassi Lakehurst feud would have not have happened. So basically, that happens, and JT gets stabbed in the aorta and dies. And of course, Mia was kind of a prick, calling Liberty an emotionless robot. So anyway, JT dies, and everyone was just shocked about it. Ryan Cooley allegedly wanted his character to die in gory fashion, but they were going to knock off JT somehow. They could have done it without killing him. Jeez. So anyway, season 7 happens. The core 4 is one short, Liberty, Toby, and Emma and all that. They go through a wild ride in which Liberty cheats on Damien. Well, Damien and Emma were supposed to get together, but Liberty goes with Damien, and Emma decides to let Liberty have a pass because Damien was the prick and all that. So after the graduation ceremony, they say that JT should graduate with them, and then does the tassel, and it was emotional, very emotional. I am a little bit biased because I was raised in the next gen era. And actually, at the time, there were rumors circulating that CTV was going to end Next Gen after season 7. So basically, that was it after 7 seasons. I mean, it was pretty good. But then CTV ran a few more seasons and then turned everything over to Much Music, to different Canadian viewership and all that. But of course, I'm talking Canadian because I am Canadian. So anyway, yeah, that was pointed. That should have been the end of the series, but it wasn't. And finally, at number 1 is the big scene in which Spitter decides to come clean to Jimmy about what happened in the bathroom and how Jimmy got shot. So the background, of course, is the Rick situation and all that. Everyone is upset that Rick was coming back to school, like seemingly with no strings attached and all that. The students take mob justice into account with Emma's Orange Ribbon campaign. Obviously, they're mad at Raj for refusing to do things and all that. So anyhow, Spinner, Jay, Alex, and yes, even Jimmy plot to destroy Rick, and then they throw him in the dumpster. Jimmy throws Rick in the dumpster. Everyone forgets about that. So basically, Rick decides to spray paint everyone's cars with a circle X. Unfortunately, he gets found out, and they want to destroy Rick and all that. They can't go to Raditch because Raditch will probably inquire about why Rick did this stuff. But regardless of that, they do the paint and feathers prank and all that. No qualms about it. They actually gets Rick's hopes up so that he doesn't see it coming, and he doesn't. Raj wants answers and all that. Rick comes back to the school with the gun, almost goes after Paige, but Paige calms him down in a sense. He was willing to let things go. So he went to the bathroom to clean himself up after putting the gun in his locker. And Jay and Spinner were talking about things, and Spinner realized that he goofed up by telling Jimmy about everything, and says that Jimmy knows, and says that Raj is going to know because Jimmy will rat on him. But also, if you see the deleted scenes, you see that Raditch actually saw Spinner cluck at Rick and wants Spinner to talk to Spinner. That probably was the whole Radish Nose thing, but we didn't see it because it was a deleted scene. Jay decides to try to get Spinner out of trouble by blaming Jimmy for everything because he sees the painted feathers in the bathroom and realizes that Rick's in the stall. So Spinner plays along and unknowingly realizes that Rick had a gun and then would shoot Jimmy and all that. I don't know why Jimmy ran straight forward. Jimmy should have zigzagged or something. He was actually lucky that Rick actually turned his head while shooting Jimmy, because if he really wanted to go after Jimmy, he would have shot him point blank in the head. Boom. But he didn't. So Emma, of course, her, Sean, and Toby are almost shot, but Sean saves them and all that. Spinner is racked with guilt right from the start. Jay tells him to shut up, and Spinner says, "We may have killed Jimmy. We didn't do anything." Jimmy, thankfully, well, he got shot in the spine, but thankfully he makes a recovery of sorts. And then it takes him 3 months, as he says in his speech, to come back to Degrassi. And Spinner finally comes clean, realizing that Jimmy's going to have problems. And Jimmy deserves to know the truth. Of course, Jimmy and everyone else at Degrassi ostracizes Spinner quite rightly. Like, Spinner deserved it and all that. I mean, Spinner should not have been involved in this. For me, Spinner should have not listened to Jay in the first place. Like, that was a gigantic boo boo. But he did. Nevertheless, Spinner wants to make up with Jimmy, but Jimmy basically says that, we're not friends. Why would you want to get me in trouble and all that? Spinner decides to take an expulsion and get better in season 5, in which he does. That was a great redemption arc done right. That he abided it, he waited his time, and he didn't do anything stupid. Jimmy thankfully forgives him in a sense. I mean, it took a year for Jimmy to forgive Spinner. I mean, anything less than a year, it would have been off putting. But anyway, Spinner resolves and becomes a better man. And this actually changes Spinner's character for the better and makes him a fan favorite. Fight me on it. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.